It began with a feeling, one of those little irrational prickles at the back of your neck that you try to laugh off until it keeps happening. For Riley Mercer, the feeling started the first week she moved into the house on Hawthorne Lane. It was a small place, older but well kept, with a narrow porch and a backyard that backed into a strip of tall trees the neighborhood called the Green Belt, because it sounded nicer than woods that the city forgot. Riley liked it immediately. After a breakup and a job change, she didn't want excitement. She wanted calm. And the house had calm in it. Sunlight through the kitchen window, creaky wood floors, the comforting sound of her kettle clicking off. At least it did during the day. At night, it felt like something was watching, not in a horror movie way, not someone's in your closet, more like eyes, like the dark outside the windows wasn't empty the way darkness is supposed to be. The first time she actually saw it, she blamed her imagination. It was around 11:30 p.m., late enough that her street was quiet. Riley had turned off the living room lights and was walking down the hall to brush her teeth when she caught movement outside. A pale shape, almost white, perched on the fence post near her back patio. She stopped. The shape didn't move. Riley stepped closer to the glass door and squinted. It wasn't a cat, it wasn't a raccoon, it was an owl. Bigger than she expected. Round head, wide, flat face like a mask. Dark eyes that didn't reflect light the way a deer's did. These eyes drank the light. The owl sat perfectly still, angled toward the house, as if it had been waiting for the moment she looked. Riley's heartbeat nudged upward. "Hi," she whispered, feeling ridiculous. The owl didn't blink. It didn't shift. It just stared. Riley did what most people do when confronted with something wild and quiet. She whispered, "Okay," and backed away from the door like she didn't want to offend it. Then she finished brushing her teeth and went to bed, telling herself it was a nice sign. Owls were good luck, right? Except the owl came back the next night. Same fence post, same time window, same stillness. The third night, it perched on the tree branch closer to her bedroom. The fourth night, it sat on the roof edge above the porch light, staring down at the front door. Riley started noticing its schedule. It didn't show up at random. It showed up on purpose. And always when the house was quiet, the lights low, the world settled into sleep. Riley tried to be practical about it. She Googled local owls, barred owls, great horned owls, barn owls. This one looked like a barn owl. Pale face, heart-shaped disc, ghostly in the dark. Her friends thought it was cute. "You've got a haunted bird," her coworker laughed over lunch. "Maybe it's your guardian," her neighbor said, smiling, the way neighbors smile when they're trying to be friendly and slightly amused. Riley laughed too, but every night she saw it, she felt less charmed and more uneasy. Because the owl wasn't just nearby, it was fixed on her house, and it was watching as if it expected something to happen. 2 weeks in, Riley noticed the second thing, a sound. Not hooting, not wings, a tap. It happened while she was sitting on her couch around midnight, scrolling on her phone with the TV muted. The tap was light, sharp, and close, like a knuckle against glass. Riley froze. Tap. It came again. She turned her head toward the side window, the one that faced the driveway and the old maple tree. The owl was there, perched on the lower branch, close enough that it looked almost unreal. And as Riley watched, the owl leaned forward and touched its beak, gently, deliberately, against the window. Tap. Riley's stomach dropped. "Nope," she said out loud. The owl tapped again. Then it tilted its head, watching her reaction like it was studying a puzzle. Riley sat completely still, trying to decide if she was dealing with a weird animal or something worse. She'd heard stories about birds attacking their reflections, but this didn't look frantic. It looked intentional. The owl tapped a third time. Then it lifted its wings, glided down, and vanished into the trees. Riley stared at the glass for a long minute after it left. Her brain tried to file it under harmless explanations: territorial behavior, reflection, curiosity. But her gut kept whispering a different possibility. It wants something. Over the next few nights, the tapping became a pattern. Not constant, not random. It happened when Riley was in the room. It happened when the owl could see her. And it always came in clusters. 3 taps, sometimes 4, then a pause like it was waiting for her to respond. Riley stopped telling friends about it because the way they smiled made her feel foolish, like she was the only one who sensed the wrongness. She started keeping the curtains closed. The owl still came. She started leaving the porch light off. The owl perched closer anyway. And then, one night, it changed the rules. It wasn't the side window this time. It was her bedroom window. Riley woke to a sound at 2:06 a.m. that didn't belong in dreams. Knock, knock, knock. Not scratching, not tapping, knocking. She sat upright so fast her blanket slid off her shoulders. Her room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of her phone charging on the nightstand. The knock came again, slow and deliberate. Riley's heart hammered. She swung her legs out of bed, barefoot on cold wood, and stepped toward the window like she was being pulled by a string she didn't want. She lifted the curtain 1 inch and stared straight into the owl's face. It was perched on the window ledge, right outside her bedroom. Its pale face was inches from the glass. It blinked once, slow and calm, then raised its beak and knocked again. Riley stumbled back, breath catching. "What do you want?" she whispered, voice shaking. The owl didn't move. It just stared at her. Then it looked down, past the window, toward the ground below the tree line. And Riley felt her skin go cold, because the owl wasn't looking at nothing. It was looking at a spot, a specific place, like it was pointing without pointing. Riley's thoughts raced. There was no rational reason for her to do what she did next. Every instinct screamed, "Lock your door, call someone, ignore it." But the owl's behavior had shifted beyond weird bird. It wasn't frightened. It wasn't aggressive. It was urgent. Riley grabbed her robe, shoved her feet into sneakers without socks, and picked up her phone. She hesitated at the back door for a long second, hand on the lock. Then she cracked the door open and stepped onto the porch. Cold air hit her face. The yard smelled like damp leaves. The owl glided down silently and landed on the fence post, its usual place, then turned its head to look back at her as if checking, "Are you coming?" Riley's breath came fast. "This is insane," she whispered, and followed it at a distance along the fence line. The owl hopped once, then took off in a low, silent glide toward the greenbelt. It landed again on a branch, turned, and stared at Riley. Waited. Riley crossed her backyard, the grass wet, her phone flashlight off because something inside her didn't want to announce herself into the dark. She reached the edge of the trees and stopped. The owl was perched above a narrow dip in the ground where the brush grew thicker. It stared down. Then it knocked, once, against the tree trunk. A sharp thud. Riley's mouth went dry. She raised her phone flashlight and aimed it carefully into the brush. The beam cut through leaves and caught something that made her whole body lock. A small shape, barely visible. A child's sneaker. Riley's blood turned to ice. She pushed branches aside, stepping carefully, phone light shaking. Then she saw the child. A little boy, maybe 6 or 7, curled on his side in the shallow dip, half covered by leaves. His face was pale and streaked with dirt. His eyes were open but unfocused. His lips trembled. Riley's voice came out in a gasp. "Oh my God! Hey! Hey! Can you hear me?" The boy didn't answer with words. He made a small sound, more breath than voice. Riley dropped to her knees beside him, hands shaking so badly her phone almost slipped. She called 911 with her thumb while keeping her other hand near the boy's shoulder without shaking him. 911, what's your emergency?" Riley forced words out through panic. "There's a child. There's a little boy in the woods behind my house. He's alive, but he's hurt or sick. Please send an ambulance. Please. The dispatcher's voice turned sharp. Ma'am, what's your location? Riley gave her address, then added, Back Greenbelt, behind the fence line. I can guide them. Stay on the line. Do not move the child. Is he breathing? Riley swallowed and watched his chest rise and fall. Yes, yes, but he's weak. Help is on the way. Riley looked around wildly, suddenly realizing how alone she was out here. And then she saw the owl, perched above her, silent, watching, not the boy, her, as if making sure she didn't run away. Paramedics arrived within minutes, lights flashing through the trees like distant lightning. A police officer came too, following Riley's frantic directions along the fence gap. They assessed the boy quickly. Dehydration, possible concussion, hypothermia starting in the night air. He was conscious, but barely. He kept trying to lift his head. Easy, buddy, the paramedic murmured, voice gentle. We got you. The boy's eyes flicked toward Riley, and he whispered one broken word. Lost? Riley's throat tightened so hard she could barely breathe. They loaded him carefully onto a stretcher and carried him out through the brush. The officer turned to Riley, face serious. How did you find him? Riley hesitated because she knew how it sounded. Then she pointed upward. The owl, she said, voice hoarse. It led me here. The officer followed her finger and saw it, still perched above the dip, pale face glowing in the flashlight beam. For a moment, his expression looked like disbelief fighting reality. Then he said quietly, Okay. Not, that's impossible. Not, you're mistaken. Just, okay. As the stretcher passed, the owl turned its head and watched the boy leave. It didn't swoop. It didn't call. It just watched, and then looked back at Riley. Riley whispered, Thank you. The owl blinked once. Then it launched into the dark and vanished between the trees like a ghost being absorbed by night. The next day, Riley learned the boy's name was Eli. He lived 3 streets over. He'd wandered out while his older brother was distracted in the yard, following a stray cat into the green belt. He slipped down the shallow dip, hit his head, and couldn't climb out. His voice was too weak for anyone to hear from the path. If Riley hadn't found him... The officer didn't finish the sentence, but Riley saw it in his eyes. Eli's mother came to Riley's house that afternoon, tears running down her face, and hugged her so hard Riley felt her ribs compress. I don't know how you found him, the woman sobbed. I don't know how to thank you. Riley swallowed and almost said the truth. Almost. But she just said, I'm so glad he's okay. That night, Riley sat on her porch steps with a mug of tea she barely touched. She stared at the trees where the owl had disappeared, half expecting it to come back and claim some kind of payment. At 11:30, the owl arrived again. It perched on the fence post. Riley's heart clenched. The owl looked at her, then slowly turned its head toward the green belt, toward the dip, then back to Riley as if checking the story had ended the way it needed to. Then it lifted its wings and flew away. No knocking, no urgency. Just gone. And Riley realized something that settled into her bones. The owl hadn't been haunting her. It had been watching the house because the house sat nearest to the place where danger hid. It had learned that lights came on here, that humans lived here, that when it knocked, someone answered. Maybe it had heard the boy's faint movements. Maybe it had seen him fall. Maybe it had simply noticed something wrong in its territory that didn't belong. And when it couldn't fix it, it did the only thing it could do. It recruited the one creature it knew could change the outcome. A human. After that, Riley never thought of her house as just a building again. It was a boundary between worlds, between safe and wild, between warm light and dark trees. And sometimes, when the wind was right and the night was still, she'd hear a soft thud somewhere in the distance, like a beak against bark, and she'd wonder what the owl was seeing now, what it was protecting, and whether, if it ever knocked again, she'd be brave enough to listen.